And sometimes students don't like the big ones, they like the kind of the smaller ones but something they can throw in their backpack and have. It just helps, I think. Now that's my personal opinion. But, maybe talk to them about, because if you can see your week ahead, that's less anxiety. You're trying to remember something, and sometimes, I don't care if you're 18 or if you're 80, sometimes you can't remember all the stuff. And an 18-year-old, all the stuff that's thrown to them from not only, academics, but social media, and just trying to keep up in the world today is almost impossible right now. Okay, health and dental services. We work with a clinic. It's not owned by Berea, but there's a clinic called White House Clinic. And students can go to the clinic there. It's right very, very close to campus, within walking distance. If they're sick, if they're getting, a sinus infection or a sore throat or something, they can go there and be treated, and they don't have to pay anything. Now, you do need an insurance card with your student, because if they have to go to the hospital, or if they have to have something done, that's not like maintenance type, sick, that type thing, they will have to have an insurance card.
So will they take Alabama Medicaid as that insurance card? Because Khalil, they've told us that it's covered, that they don't have to worry about insurance.
Okay.
It's part of the plan if they're on Alabama Medicaid.
That's fine then.
Okay.
Yeah. Dental services, let's say they need to have a cleaning, they need to have a filling, then they can go to the clinic, and there is no charge for those services. If they have to have something more than that, like a root canal or a crown or something, that's not covered. That would have to be something that the student would be able to have to work with the clinic on payment. And they could go over to financial aid and see if there's any funds that they could use if they had to have like dental services beyond that.
But if they have insurance, they can just use your card.
Sure, they have dental insurance, yeah.
They have their own personal insurance.
Yeah, that absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
So with the Medicaid, that only goes to age 19. So
Right.
after they reach that age,
They have to buy insurance.
they
yeah.
have to.
And Berea offers insurance. It's not Obama. It doesn't even cover what Obama has, Obamacare. But if they don't have any other insurance, then they can purchase insurance from the college.
I think they cover that in their tuition. I think it's part of, if they have a 0 EFC, I think that the insurance, we need to get that answer.
Yeah, you need to.
Because that's what I've been told.
Understanding.
Okay.
Your understanding was if they had a
From
0
Carl,
EFC?
that insurance would be, that they wouldn't have to buy insurance to be here.
Okay.
That's what
Well,
Carl
I
told us.
can
But let's verify
find
that.
answer before you leave today. And
Yes.
I'll let you know something.
Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem. Then the Center for Teaching and Learning, that is actually set up for students because they, in high school, they write for a certain way, their writing skills are set up, but in college, writing skills are really, have to be amped up a lot. And so, it's like here, when a student goes to class and they're expected to have this level of writing, and if they need help, then they can go to the Center for Teaching and Learning.
Is it just for writing or is it for other?
This is just for writing, but if you need tutorial services in other areas, that's when you go through the Office of First Year Initiatives. Mm-hmm. And then Office of Disability and Accessibility Services, if a student has any type of disability or accessibility issues and they need services, you would want to talk to them first to see if Berea could accommodate what their disability or accessibility needs are. Okay. Any questions on any of those? Okay, now I'm going to go over the tuition promise and a little bit about the financial aid. So obviously you know Carl's been with you all for a number of years. You kind of know that every student here, their full tuition is covered. And tuition is the most expensive component of going to college. It's not housing, it's not a meal plan, it's not books, it's the cost of tuition. And when a student is admitted to Berea, that's the promise that their tuition is covered for the entire time.
And how much is that right now?
Pardon?
What is it right now? What's tuition?
Tuition is around 16,000.
A year?
A year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go over again the tuition promise scholarship. I've kind of gone over that you're covered by tuition costs. Work scholarship, every student must work here. And their freshman year, they are assigned a job. After their freshman year, they can apply for other jobs on campus. They have to go through an interview process. But students are paid, and their money is not used toward any other cost. If they want to use that to help pay for some of their costs, they can. They're paid once a month, and they must have a checking account to have their money deposited. College does not do paper checks. So I would suggest, your student have some type of a checking account. I know that we have some students, you can't get a checking account, I don't think, until you're at least 18 years old. But you can if you have like a parent's signature on one. But that's something that they would need to have before they come to Berea, is a checking account, so that their pay can be deposited. So being paid once a month means that in the fall when they come, they would have a check at the end of September, and then another one at the end of October, and then the end of November. So it's not like they get paid every week or every 2 weeks. It's once a month. Yes, ma'am.
With the work scholarship and freshmen are assigned, I've just heard different things about the jobs that they have to do. So since they are assigned that first year,
Yes.
the type of jobs they get, are they like related to their career field or just?
Not
is it a certain
necessarily.
thing where freshmen, just because you're a freshman, you have to start out
Probably, yes.
in the field?
And it
or-
could be custodial type work. It could be working in food service. It could be on the farm. It could be a variety. Because Berea feels like, that's part of the development of a person, that there's all jobs are equal no matter what you do. Now, I'm going to tell you some, freshmen don't like what they're particularly assigned to do, but they have to do it their freshman year, and that's when they get the option of applying for other jobs. And some of them will stay where they're at. We've had some students here stay, and you have to understand, some of our students are on the phone, but then after they're not on the phone, they're cleaning the bathrooms too. So it's not like a student gets to do just one thing. If they can be doing 4 or 5 different jobs in one building.
And if they've worked before, like if they worked at a retail store, do they sometimes look at that and say, oh, she might be a good fit for
I
the...
don't think they really do, to be honest with you. They look at where the needs are and where they're going to place you, yeah. Because some students get in daycare centers, some get into retail. We have a couple of stores, some get in food service. I think it would be too hard for them to try to take a student and say, okay, well, you've had this experience, so.
But that's just the freshman year though, right?
That is the freshman year.
So how many hours, how many days per week they'll work?
They work 12 hours a week,
12 hours a week.
and that could be over 3 or 4 days, depending on their class schedule. Of course, their classes are ultimately the first thing that they, have to be focused on. But then, like our students, for the most part, they come in for 2-3 hours at a time. And it's really great because they can put on a resume. Where, like a lot of our students, you can't have a car either. So when you don't have a car, and you're not allowed to work off campus either. So, it's great because you can work at the same place you go to school. You don't have to worry about having transportation. And then you also get to put on a resume when you graduate that you've had 4 years of work experience in these different areas on campus. Now, when you ask about if it's something related to their field, once you get past that freshman year and you get more into your program, then there could probably be something that's close to your program or in that department that you could apply for. Okay. We have some Berea College grants too that help cover the cost of tuition, and if you live in any of these areas, some of those also help offset the cost of going to Berea. Now, all students, all freshmen that are admitted to Berea have to qualify for the federal Pell Grant, and that's based off of the FAFSA information. Have all of you done your FAFSA information? Okay, and you had it sent to Berea? Okay. So part of my job is to go in and look at FAFSA information, EFC, and that type of thing, to see what everyone's expected family contribution is.
So, can you give an example? Like, most of these parents have a 0 EFC from what
Okay.
we've done the FAFSA, and I don't know if they understand that the work scholarship covers room and board. Like, if I'm correct in that, the cost of working also goes towards paying.
Yes. Cost of work, everything really that students do here go toward their costs. For most of you, if you have a 0 EFC, then your student is not expected to come up with any money. But if their EFC was 1,000, let's just randomly round number, the federal government said you were, this is what your expected family contribution would be, that is what your student would pay to come to Berea, is $1,000. That's not covered by any scholarships, that's not covered by Pell Grant, that's covered from out of pocket that the student would have to come with. And they could set that up through a payment plan, they could take a student loan out, they could also set up to have part of their work pay toward that too. But work is combined with all the other things. When you see an award letter from Berea, it's gonna combine tuition, work, Pell Grant, any other outside grants that you might have, like SEOG is another grant. See, Alabama will not send any of their grant money to a Kentucky school, so we can't count on that. We only get from your student probably a federal Pell Grant. And so the college is making up the rest of that, and so that work is part of the requirement of helping to pay toward your education. You have to do the FAFSA every year because your financial situation could change. So this year it could be a 0, but next year it could have risen because your income has risen. So just keep in mind, every October your student has to do a renewal on the FAFSA. And what the student's required to come up with, their part, is whatever their EFC number is.
So if it's 0, they don't have to borrow any money.
If you're a 0, then your student doesn't have to come up with anything. They do need to come up with money to help toward books, because that's not covered. Books are not covered. The college gives students $100 for books in the fall, but you would need to come up with some extra money to help cover books. And we tell students around $500 a semester for books.
Could they use their work study money that they get paid to pay for books?
You can buy your books, they can buy their books, and then they turn around and pay back the college.
What is the average amount of that pay that's paid to the student at the end of the month? How much money are they given?
I don't know, to be honest. I would ask some of the students up front. Some of them get paid a little higher based on as they graduate, as they go higher into, some of them get a little bit more, so I don't know. But I would just ask the students, what do you get paid a month? Yeah, how much do you take home?
So they take out, they work a month, they get paid every month, so they take out percentage from the school and percentage go to their pocket.
Well, they get it all if nothing is coming to the school.
Right.
So I think it's about $2,000.
They
A month.
estimate 1,000 each semester.
No, yeah, that's
A
right.
semester.
Yeah. I said not a month.
That they have the potential to earn, yeah.
And they can also like get books online or buy used books. I mean, there are
Yeah.
ways to save money on buying books.
So when you do that, you gotta have a credit card, because you can't buy books online without a credit card. And so you can rent books. Now, you can't really rent through Berea because they don't have that. And you're not buying your books through Berea, you're buying them through another third party that Berea works with. But when you rent a textbook, then at the end of the semester, you ship it back to them. And you don't have to pay as much. Textbooks are high.
Do they read books through CHED?
Yes. Well, and Berea doesn't. Berea has another website that they use. But you can get a textbook through them because, there's this IB number that you have to have, and that tells you what what textbook is required for what class. But yeah, you can rent them. Textbooks are, to me, just, I don't know, I don't want to get started on it. I think it's a big racket, to be honest with you, because then when you try to sell it, you don't get anything for it. If you've been in college, you know that, so. Carter G. Woodson Legacy Scholarship, this is another scholarship for students who qualify who have been in the Legacy Scholarship or the Carter G. Woodson program. And this scholarship covers their tuition. So it's kind of like, it's the same, they're getting tuition too, but they're getting it through the Carter G. Woodson Legacy Scholarship. Now, student achievement aid. Let's say your student gets a scholarship from their high school, from their church, from somebody outside of Berea. They send it to Berea. They can use that to help pay books. So if, they got a scholarship for $1,000, then that $500 each semester would be used, and they could use that for their books.
Can they use that money for personal expenses? So
No.
just for books?
That's for books. And if it's over that, let's say, I don't know, it was $2,000 scholarship, they can use $500 each semester toward books, but the rest of it is gonna go to offset their tuition cost. So they really don't get anything back in any kind of a refund or anything like that. They don't.
Can they use it for travel abroad?
They can, if there is enough for that, they can. Most of the time, scholarships in a freshman year are one time. They give you a one-time scholarship, and then it's usually, unless it's something rare and they give it to you for 4 years, but a lot of times they don't. And that would be something, most of the time what financial aid will say is that you can use it for medical and dental, whatever's left over. And it has to be used in that 8 year, so that's the problem, is that if you got that money, you can't do a study abroad in your freshman year. So. But you can, there are scholarships on campus, there's money to help with study abroad, and there's also student loans that you can use. Now, students do take out loans here, so I need for you to know that not everyone, that there are some people that have to have loans. About 49% of this past graduating class, they did not have loans when they graduated. But the average loan debt is around $6,600, so it's a lot less than what the national norm is.
Do you know what that is?
Oh, it's probably 5 digits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say for most schools, most public institutions in Kentucky, it's around 20,000. I have no idea what it is for other private
It's up
schools.
to 30, something
Yeah.
like
Do you guys go to a second party, like doing homework, work online? Like,
Yeah, Blackboard.
yeah, y'all use Blackboard?
Mhm.
So y'all connected with Chet through Blackboard?
Well, I don't know about check, but they
They use-
enter, they do tests a lot too.
Blackboard,
Yeah,
okay.
through Blackboard and stuff like that.
that.
Yeah. Everything is electronic now.
Yeah.
You still do go in on some of the classes and you do a paper test and everything, but a lot of times your homework and quizzes and things like that are done online. Okay, I hate this thing because it hates me. I hate this board. Okay, sorry, let me go back to this. Do I need to go over the FAFSA with any of you? You're pros at doing the FAFSA.
We've been over it a lot, but if they want someone from besides me might be good to go over it again. I don't know.
Well, just some common mistakes that a lot of times people do. They do the wrong year.
That just happened with one of our students, but we fixed it.
Yeah, so we always have to go over that. I've had some parents call me, they've experienced issues about signing electronically. They'll have an FSA ID, but then it won't let them sign, and so we really can't help you. The schools cannot help you a lot with that. We suggest that you call the 1-800 number. They're not always that helpful either sometimes, but then you can also, last case scenario, print off the signature sheet, and then you can mail that in. You got to have a parent's signature or they will not come up with your EFC number. So, things like putting the wrong amount of number in the household. You can't count people that, like we had a student that counted her grandfather because he lived down the road and sometimes he comes to visit. No, he doesn't live with you. You know, those are things that you have to really be accurate about, and how the number in college. Parent, if you're in college, you cannot count yourself in college on your student's FAFSA. You know, things like that that maybe sometimes people don't know or they overlook. I always suggest doing the DRT, the data retrieval tool through the IRS, because you do that, about 97% of people that do that, you know, don't get selected for verification. But if you do, then it's so easy to do verification if you get selected.
I have a question. So some of our parents are on disability. So,
Yes.
you know, doing the FAFSA, it was 0 for income, and then automatically it was skip the assets, and we were done and signed it. And we also do the CSS profile because a lot of our schools require that, which is a whole nother, you know. But if they get selected for Berea, what document would someone on disability sign saying that they were non-tax, that they didn't have to file taxes?
They actually have to go through the IRS and they have to get documentation. There is something called a 4506T form, and you have to mail that into the IRS, and then the IRS will send you back a letter verifying that you did not file taxes.
Is that something you would recommend we just go ahead and do with our parents who are on disability?
Probably a good thing, yeah, and you're gonna be
Cassandra.
doing it make sure that you're doing it for the 2018. I'll go print you one of the forms off so that you can see what it looks like. You can Google it and get it, but I'll print one off for you.
Okay.
But it's basically just a form that again, the colleges are no longer allowed to help with that, but you mail it into the IRS, and you're gonna need this for any school they apply to. You mail it into the IRS, and they'll send back a confirmation letter that you did not file taxes. So you really can't do it yet. You need to do it after the first of the year, because people are you can still file. Is it past where you can file a 2018 tax return? It has to be past the time that you can file a 2018, and I think it's still going on. I had a parent the other day that had not filed a tax return since 2014.
We have a parent. What are we going to do about that?
You've got to go back and file everything first.
Well, what if? Okay.
You can't.
What if they weren't required to file? It's okay.
Oh, well, that's fine if you're not required.
But this
But
was-
if you're required to file, you have to.
So okay. I'll okay.
Yeah. So basically, this parent has to file all those years back. They will not process. So I'll get that form for you though, yeah. And it's pretty easy. You fill it out, you put your name, you tell, exactly what that you're asking for. It's the same form that you can ask for a tax transcript on too. But it's just a letter that comes back to you that says this is to confirm that you did not file a tax return. Yeah. All right, what other questions?
Would that be a good form for the students to do also? Because sometimes students are asked to verify that they
Did not file.
a tax return.
Yeah,
So
now, if
look
they're
at
in a
student name.
situation, well, a lot of times, like on the FAFSA, it asks on the student part, did you file? And they say, will not file. Now, if they worked and didn't file, that's okay, as long as they have a W-2. Because if they get selected for verification, you gotta have that W-2.
And if they don't have a W-2, can they get a letter from their employer?
No, they have to have a W-2, or they have to go through the IRS to get a W-2. So if the employer issued a W-2, it had to go through the IRS, so they would have to get like a W-2 or verification of a W-2 through the employer.
And that's only if the student gets selected for verification.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical?
Mhm.
Yeah, for the student.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it amazes me though, to be quite honest with you, how employers don't keep records like that. I know that sometimes, I don't know, I know these big food chains and places like that, the corporate office is doing W-2s, but in trying to get another copy is like impossible sometimes. But we've had students who've just worked for someone, let's say they worked and they were caregiver, they did lawn work, or they did something like that, and they didn't have a W-2, but they earned this amount of money. And so, that person could put something in writing, the person that they work for, but if they worked at, a place of business, you gotta have the W-2.
But if you're like a landscape, then that's okay for a letter.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if you even know the answer to this, but I have a student that had gotten a tax, like, she called it something, you can't file, like a freeze, and she's trying to figure out, like, how to file, because she, it's some kind of, well, yeah,
Does
obviously.
she have identity fraud or something?
No, she moved, and she got audited, and she didn't get the audit to do it, and so she ended up, whatever the word is, it's like a hold or something, and we're just trying to figure out how to resolve that. Now that I've learned a lot now, so we'll figure out what to do. But
Well, and the thing is that she's filed though. She just hasn't.
they wouldn't let her file 2000. She's ready to file, but they wouldn't let her because of the hold.
Yeah. Well, one thing too to keep in mind, like on this form that you're going to fill out, you've got to have, they will reject if you've moved and the address is not the same as what they know. Like on the DRT, on the FAFSA, if you try to do the data retrieval tool, you've got to put the same address in on that as what you filed on your tax return, otherwise it will reject it.
And is that okay to do even though your address is wrong?
Doesn't matter. IRS can't link it unless it's the same.
So it's okay
They
to
have to go in and do it manually.
Every information has to be matched there.
and it's okay to do it even though technically you don't live there anymore.
That's right, it
Okay.
is.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, because again, all we're asking for that is that link, and that link can only go to what's on your tax return.
so y'all remember that, if I forget, that when we're filling out the non-tax filer to use your address as it on the 2000. Well, they didn't file taxes, so that wouldn't matter.
I know, but they probably are looking at, you're getting Social Security, is that what you're
Yeah,
getting?
well, they're not her, not, we're the two directors.
Okay, but somebody,
Yes.
whoever in the
It's getting-
household, they will run that through and see that.
So we need to use the address that's on their disability.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how many times people have filled out that form and see, the IRS not gonna tell you, they just don't send it. They're not gonna tell you anything, you have no way of knowing what happened or why it rejected. But we do know that, if it doesn't look, the address doesn't match.
They actually sent me a letter saying after I did the FAFSA, hey, your information was uploaded to FAFSA directly from the IRS. I got it.
Good.
So they do send that out.
He said
They
email.
send like a confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if everything matches, they'll go ahead and link your information and send it
Yes.
through.
And that's what you want, because, the thing that the IRS is confirming for the schools is your adjusted gross income.
Right.
And that's what is driving, that's one of the components driving that EFC number. But also what's driving it is numbering household, numbering college, whatever your savings, assets, any kind of other untaxed income, that goes into the calculation. But at least the school knows that when we got your FAFSA, if that data retrieval went through, then that income is correct, and that's what they
So
need.
at what point if you didn't go through it, how would you know?
Well, some people can't use the data retrieval tool.
Right.
Like if you've been a victim of identity fraud, you can't. If you're married filing separately, you cannot, because it can't attach to two tax returns. A lot of times I've seen if you file head of household, you can't do the data retrieval tool either, for whatever reason.
Really? That's crazy, because most people do.
Mine's linked.
That's good,
Mhm.
but I've seen some parents that it won't